Here we are between two sprints. I'm your host, Matt Tomats, with my co-host, Adam Rolfe, aka Speed Farm, and the man, the myth, the legend, Jordan Cook. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was good just seeing you guys. As obviously last weekend at the clinic and stuff. So excited to hop on.
I was going to say I've shaken this man's hand on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and if you couldn't tell by now from his accent, he's not from the States, but he resides in Jacksonville, Florida at B3 Better Sports Performance, where he is the director of sports performance and rehab. I would say he's one of the most kind of forward-thinking, progressive people using the 1080 really well in the kind of rehab space, return to play, using motorized resistance and data to support kind of his processes. So I'm sure Adam is excited for our first kind of rehab centric kind of guest. And here we are between two sprints, had to show off the three of us up close and personal. But it's been super nice kind of getting to know Jordan over the last however long it's been. And please feel free to fill in anything I missed about your background, and then we will get into it.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. So with B3 right now, running that stuff. But my background, as I think most coaches probably came through, failed athlete, thought they were going to go where they wanted to go and they didn't, but was trying to figure the process out as you navigate the space yourself. So I did my undergrad in athletic training, kind of like came over from England and was like, okay, athletic training, I'm an athlete. That sounds right up my alley. Let me do that. Realizing like, okay, now it's a whole allied health professional medical side. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is a little bit deeper than I thought, but really fell in love with that. And luckily had some people along the way that kind of like navigate that space and kind of showed me this kind of saying of like rehab and training and kind of like one in the same. It's just like, you're just training in presence of injuries or no injuries are there. And so after that, I was like, let's do it. Done with athletic training. I moved on and did my master's in kinesiology, exercise science, and was like, strength conditioning is me. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be very, retroactive. I'm going to be proactive, get out in front and try and stop all these injuries from happening. As a young, naive coach would probably think in those things. So then did my grad assistantship, did strength and conditioning at Georgia Southern. So then was dual credentials, ATC, CSCS, and then took that and now basically been in the private sector ever since. I've worked for some physical therapy companies, but mostly doing this performance-based training down in Jacksonville.
Fantastic. So we are excited to have you on this side of the pond, but we will get into it. So 1080 specifically, right?
Yeah.
What was the first exposure? What got you into it? Were you kind of the driving force between getting it where you currently are? Was it kind of already there? What was the first thought when you kind of saw it and realized it was kind of at your disposal? Kind of take us through your origin with your 1080 Sprint 1, the OG.
The OG. So yeah, we've got the original. Like again, I was talking to some people about it. I was like, it's the Toyota Tacoma, is what it is. That thing is robust and will run forever. That thing will never go wrong. So, funny enough, actually, they already had it before I came on. Well, they were using it while I wasn't around. So my first experience was coming in and like, hey, some people have already been messing around with it, using it. And I'm like a deer in headlights. When I first got it, I was like, what? Like, I don't know what this button does, this button does, this button does. I did nothing. So it really was like a learning by fire of like thrown in the deep end and like, hey, we use this and just kind of figuring it out in that kind of aspect. But yeah, one of our guys here in Jacksonville that we know and stuff kind of put us on, and he'd been using it a lot in the track stuff. And we very much kind of corner and talk a lot around speed and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, relying on some of those information and stuff like that. And then when you kind of talk about speed, 1080 kind of is the one that comes up in conversations too. So it's like, okay, how can we better kind of like quantify some of this stuff and do right by some of the athletes that we work with? So they ended up getting it. And then, once we had it, it was kind of like a dive into it and how else can we use it? In the way it is in the private sector, most of the time we have to justify cost and things like that, right? So to have it just to sprint on is great. But if there's all these other uses that we can use it for as well, it just, it just makes it so much more worthwhile because it's not just a one-stop shop kind of thing.
So with your dual role of sports performance and kind of rehab, did your brain first go to, wait, how can this be used rehabby? Or was it kind of just a little bit simpler performance? That's what your coworkers had kind of been doing? Yeah. Or where did that kind of intersection of both of those kind of happen as you were kind of diving into it?
It was definitely probably performance orientated. And to be honest, it's probably how I see rehab too. I'm very performance minded. So it's always starting with the end in mind. So it's like, hey, if I'm doing all this stuff with my performance-based athletes and this is what I got to get them back to, okay, how do I get them there? And, and then to be honest, like Adam being a massive help in that, of picking his brain on around some of those things of, hats off to ads for those kind of things. Okay, like, hey, like how can I use this? And it's very much one like, get in there and use it. And the more you use it, like these little light bulbs go off. It's like, well, what can I do it on this? But definitely in being like in that safer environment, I definitely probably try myself, tried a few things and was like, I probably won't do that with very many athletes, but it's a cool thing to do. But definitely start on the performance side and then work backwards from that. And then obviously that gets into the isokinetics and all those kind of things and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely started in the flip-flop on that one.
So it's interesting about when I first met Jordan, you were actually in England. I think it was during COVID.
Yeah.
We did a call, Ola, myself, and Peter. So this is back in the 2020 days when you guys had gotten this. And you had some really, really smart points at that point. That's what I remember. I remember Ola and I afterwards thinking like, okay, this guy gets it in rehab. He's going to be doing some things. And you guys have been doing some really cool things down in Jacksonville. For the audience, I think it'd be really nice for them to kind of know, at that private location with your therapy background, performance background, how are you guys implementing the system? So like, how do you make revenue on it? Like, what are some of those tips that you could share? Because not a lot of places do that. A lot of people think we're just university or pro teams, and we have a lot of private facilities that use this.
Yeah.
And you guys are unique because you've brought it into that rehab and crossed it over with the performance side.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, performance-wise, we use it a lot, and we try to almost act as like an information kind of hub for people as much as we can. So like not everyone's going to have access to 1080, and we know like force velocity and low velocity profile and all those kind of things. But doing it without it is kind of a hassle, setting up timing lights and then doing different weights and then recording it all and then running that profile. And, we've all been there. That's what we all did right before, kind of, that's what we did. But now being able to do that, it's quite easy to then go out and be like, hey, we can give teams and organizations this data to use. So, we can go out there and test the team and run force velocity profiles, and we can kind of act in that kind of consultancy kind of base, area of, hey, this is how you can kind of group your athletes to make your training a little bit more individualized. And even if we just tell them the groups and they figure out the training kind of aspect for us, that's one way that we can kind of use it in the performance aspect. And then from the rehab kind of aspect, again, it's kind of all starts with the evaluation process of just getting a lower barrier to entry to getting high quality data and getting that data to therapists, or getting those data to, orthopedics or whoever is kind of in their health team. Right, let me give you the information that we can do in that kind of section. And if the training comes on the back end of it, even better. But we definitely use it in that way. For the biggest way that I've used it too is isokinetically for like quad extensions. And I think I've done a post with Matt and you guys on around that. And for me, it's just such gold of how much is a biodex, you know what I mean? And it's going to sit in the corner, and you talk to anybody and they're like, it collects dust. It sits there, it collects dust. You don't do a lot with it. And it's like, well, we have one. And then we can also like do low chops on it. We can do sprints on it. We can do deceleration on it. We can do anything that your imagination can think of to do it. Plus, we can do isokinetic testing as well. You know what I mean? So those kind of things, it kind of creates this justifiable cost of you get a training and a testing tool, which I'm pretty sure we'll talk about. So
yeah, I think you said it well, where the 1080 is kind of the in or the glue, as I've been describing it, where it's like, hey, we can do all of your testing because we have the stuff, but it's not going to tell you how to train. I'll tell you what these groups are. I'll tell you the strengths and weaknesses of the speed profiling, but like, what do you believe in next, right? And I guess I'll bring this back to kind of how you started, where it's like, first, let me learn what the buttons do.
Yeah.
And then it's, well, how about this? And then how about this? And then kind of how about that? So super, super cool kind of how you got into it and kind of bridging that gap. And now I want to dive in specifically to one or two of kind of the things that excite you the most, or kind of the top things. I know isokinetics is a big thing. That's been a big light bulb for me, honestly, as a recovering strength coach, as I say. But what are those kind of 1 to 2 things? We'll go more from like a rehab lens that has just been like super instrumental to helping you become the best kind of rehab practitioner you can be.
Yeah. With it, I think it's the accessibility of data is the biggest thing that like really gets my like brain ticking, and probably what creates more light bulbs is the more data you get, the more things start clicking and more questions you start asking, which then the data can probably answer again too. So like I believe it. So then this is in the team setting, what I believe in the private sector, right, as well as the team setting and the collegiate setting, right. We all live on this probably spectrum of like efficiency and effectiveness, right? That we know probably the most effective thing is for like sprint training, you know, is to sit down, pop a chair, rest for 5 minutes, and then like sprint again. It's just not going to happen, right? And it's the same thing. Like we talk about it all the time. Is like, is a test day still necessary? Right, we're amping up for this big one test day and stuff like that. And it's the 1080 just gives testing is training and training is testing, because as soon as you're doing any sort of exercise, the data is there for you to be able to analyze and then look at as we tick through those things. So it's like, you know, you're looking at like force velocity or low velocity curves, as far as those kind of things. Those things like really excite me, because as you start ticking through those things and stuff like that, you start seeing things. So like my example is, again, with the isokinetics, with the quad extension and stuff like that, some graphs now are becoming more popular for ACL repair than they previously have been. So previously, like the most popular one is probably your patella tendon, right? And now all of a sudden, right, your quad tendon has become really popular, especially at least here in Jacksonville. And I'm sure, I don't know, Adam might be able to talk, but it's pocketed. I think it depends on what the orthopedics like and stuff like that. But the quad tendons, like now, like it was like I saw one, and now it's like everybody that I see all has quad tendon grafts. But looking at isokinetically on the force time curve and stuff like that, we're starting to see, I was like, every time I was doing it, I was like, I'm seeing this big divot in the first, you know, like half of the isokinetic. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? You know, so you start asking questions. Why is it always like that? You start looking, okay, the quad tendon graph is coming more from rec fem tendon and stuff like that, and deeper ranges are more affected. And then now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now I know that that's an issue. How do I start training around that and start doing some things around that and stuff like that? So that kind of stuff really intrigues me of, you know, gathering data and then ask, or even that it creates questions that you can then go out and ask, you know what I mean? And stuff like that, and find out. And with 1080, with spin, it's actually like kind of an ecosystem and a family too. It's super easy to talk to other people. People love talking 1080. So as soon as you have a question, it's like, you know, I'm sure somebody else is asking the same question and you can talk to them about it. And 1080 definitely is one that kind of talks through that stuff. So that stuff definitely super interests me, with that too.
What was your experience like, since we all three of us were down at Eric Cressy's Sports Performance facility down in Florida for our clinic, which was, I enjoy it, those things, getting with customers. But what was your experience like? Like, people like talk today, right? We get people together. That's our job, right? Like Matt and I, we like to bring experts, people that are into this stuff, and bring them together and let them just do their thing. What takeaways did you have from that event?
Oh, and 100, yeah, it was brilliant. You know, I mean, I love coming away from talks probably thinking like I know less than going in, because it means like people are talking about stuff I don't know about, right? So as I can start looking at it. But it was really, and again, it's really looking at being almost trying to apply the strategy. Look at the force time curves. Look at the data. Don't just look at the numbers. Look at the data and try and see like what strategies are people using, right? And it goes back to the quad extension too. Like I've seen people's numbers be within 10%, right, of themselves, if you're just looking at the average number and stuff like that. But then you look at the graph and it's like, okay, how they got there was totally different. So I definitely took that away. Like everybody was kind of saying the same thing of like, hey, get your sample, get your population that you work with, and then collect that data and then start answering the questions for the people that you work with, because it is different. It is different populations, different people and stuff like that. That's definitely one thing that I took away, and something that I do more, more now so than ever is, okay, well, let me look at the graph. How did you get to this number? And then what can I look at it from that?
Yeah, I think combining the quantitative with the qualitative is super, super powerful. You know, and back on Browse Data, the OG software, where you have the graph on top and then the data on bottom, where it's like, yeah, you know, two athletes could hit the same top speed or complete 30 yards in the same time, but force velocity, like you're saying, they could get the same time but do it differently, right?
Yeah.
Or the testing is training is testing, where I remember back when I was coaching, like resisted bounding is just a drill I like. It's hard to do well, right? And you can load it up kind of light, moderate. I wouldn't even look at the actual data of their bounds because they're not bounding for a specific distance or a specific kind of time, but I would look at the shape of the bounds, right? How is their speed over? I look at like speed distance. To say no, like how were you bounding, not just like what did you bound, So that was definitely a big light bulb kind of for me as well. So I'm glad it's been a big piece of your kind of journey as well. So kind of last, because I have to keep this as the host, I got to keep this on track. So I'm very action oriented, right? I think that there's so much value in just learning what the buttons are. How about this? How about this? Et cetera, et cetera. If you had to give the audience some homework, right? I know I'm the worst. Some homework. Hey, I want you to go try to figure out how to do this, or do this button, see how this feels yourself. If you had to give someone homework to go try it, do it, feel it, learn what's a good number, a bad number, something actionable, kind of what rabbit hole would you send them on?
I'm probably going to be super biased because it's a rabbit hole that I'm going down more and more. And it's probably actually perfectly in line with what you guys, Matt, what you're putting on is the deceleration. And again, exactly what we talked about, looking at the force time traces during deceleration and how all that kind of stuff starts to connect to the qualitative and the quantitative and those kind of things of, looking at Harper stuff. And looking at those ADAs and looking at those kind of stuff of, okay, get people on the machine, have them go 5 yards back, have them sprint, stop, and then, and then just back pedal out, go to 10 yards, go to 15 yards, go to 20 yards, and I really pull them in on that and try and get them to see, how many people can you actually get to get up to near 100% of their velocity and slam the brakes on, and how many people won't do it. And then, you can start looking at, I think, the really cool metrics of, look at the metrics of how far did they accelerate in the zone, and we start looking at all those things, acceleration and deceleration zones. I think that's a big piece of where the 1080 really shines. Thinking of it of, it's probably one of it's the best way to start overloading horizontal, kind of impulse and those kind of things, right? Instead of vertical, right? You can put a weight on them and stuff like that. But I think examining that and seeing how the force times curves kind of change depending on the entry velocity. And I found it does change. People's strategies will change, deficiencies will start popping up. I think that's super interesting. I think it's probably one of the next big things as far as if people are super aware of that and super knowledgeable in that space. I think if you can be in the forefront of that, I think you'll be in the right conversations with the right people anyway.
Awesome kind of segue. Or I'll share kind of more info on that. So this will be on our YouTube. So as someone's watching this, it's on our YouTube. We have 2 COD webinars where Ola kind of goes through the history and some of the best practices of kind of why do we use certain metrics or why do we not? And then I'll quickly go through how to set it up on your tablet. And then I'll open the floor up to Jordan and Adam for any kind of closing remarks. But to set up an ADA test, right? You want the direction to be assisted. So this will be towards the machine. You want it to be an auto start. So basically, whenever they break 0.2 meters a second, it'll start collecting. You want it to be an auto stop. So that's that back pedal, right? You sprint 10 yards forwards towards the machine. And then as soon as you start moving away, then it knows that the test is over, right? And then you can say what foot they started with in front, left or right. So then you can actually look at how much is each leg contributing to the deceleration. So assisted direction, auto start, auto stop, and then whatever leg they're doing. And then with the increasing distance, instead of just increasing load, right? Because then it could be a little bit dangerous and kind of things like that. You increase distance to see if they can handle it, right? Yeah. To kind of summarize some of our COD webinar. So 2 or 3 kilos, you need a little bit of tension on the line and then add in some distance and see how their metrics kind of change. So that is how you actually set up the ADA. And then Jordan's the mad scientist that told you to go do it. Don't shoot the messenger. So I'm going to open up the floor to Adam and Jordan, whoever wants to hop in first. But I'll say thank you very much for both of your guys' times. I'm glad I got to shake your hand twice, and I'm looking forward to the third one.
Yeah, so am I. A little plug. Was it Arizona?
Oh, yeah. We'll be in Arizona February 7th. That's Saturday. And I'll let Adam hop in, and then Jordan tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, February 7th, 2026. We're going to be out at Altus's facility. So we're really excited to have another clinic and bring customers together and non-customers and just talk 1080 and really elevate athletic performance and rehab. So thank you, Jordan, for jumping on. Yeah, plug where you're at. Where can people find more things about you?
I'm probably the most active on Instagram, even though Matt might say otherwise. But Jordan_Cook_performance on there. And then again, email. You can find me on B3 website, but Jordan@b3better.com. So if anyone wants to talk, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm more than happy to talk all kind of things 1080 or not.
You're not there yet with social. We will get there for sure. So thank you very much again, both you guys, and looking forward to the next one.
Perfect. Thank you.